Welcome everyone to the Knowledge Mine. I am delighted that we have one of India's finest coaches and instructors here today. I'm very thankful to Tarun for agreeing to come and share his time and the wealth of knowledge that he has for the benefit of everyone. And I want to thank all the participants also who have made the time to be online. I can guarantee you there'll be a wealth of knowledge to be gained. And as you know, the objective of these talks is to mine information, mine knowledge, which can benefit everyone. So Tarun, thanks very much.
Thanks, Steve. Thanks for having me on. I think I've watched all your talks and I'm really delighted to be here. I think your talks have been the most informative. I've learned a lot as well. I think how you've conducted these sessions has been amazing. So thanks for having me here, and I hope to be able to share as much of my knowledge as I can with the golfing world.
Thank you so much, Tarun. That's sweet of you to say that. I appreciate that. Ladies and gentlemen, how the talk will flow is that I'm going to ask him a few questions. I've got a full list of questions ready. And you could also post your questions on the chat box. And I will try and weave them into the conversation. And in case we can't do it during the conversation, I'll ask them at the end. Let me just quickly start by telling you a little bit about Tarun. He turned professional in 1999 to play some professional golf. He started teaching in 2003. He set up this mouth-watering golf learning facility and academy at the Zion Hills. And that was in 2013. And since then, it's become a residential academy. It's got full-time schooling. And what's most beautiful is that they have a motto, which I totally resonate with. It's called Sport is Education. So we'll hear a lot more about his academy as well. And so the main conversation is about getting some knowledge, but there'll be some history as well. So I'm going to start by asking Tarun. Tarun, tell us, how does this journey in teaching start?
Well, I think like most teaching professionals, I also played professionally. I think I turned pro in 1999. And of course, back then, we didn't have the kind of knowledge that we had today. So I think it was not the best decision to turn pro at that time. But I did it anyway. And in fact, I had one person who actually tried to stop me, and that was Mr. Dilip Thomas, who was in many ways a sort of a mentor. And he said, don't do it right now. It's a bit early for you. But of course, when you're young and brash and you think you know everything, you say, what, I'm going to do this because, I think I'm ready. I was definitely not ready. So turned pro in 99. And I think by 2002, I was at a crossroads, I think, because I wasn't really doing well on tour. My game was actually progressively getting worse every year. And that's when I actually met my then guru, Donato Ponziano. And Donato had come into India to coach some of the players as well as train the trainers. And he took one look at me and he says, I don't think you can play. I think you should start teaching. And I was so hurt when he said that.
Brutal.
It was brutal.
But good.
But one of the two guys who told me the truth. And I appreciate that now. And he says, Tarun, I'm going to be doing India's first certification course. Why don't you come and attend it? And, and he says, the rest is up to you, And I'll never forget those 8 days. It was in Eagleton. I think I sat in the front row and I was transfixed to the screen. I was transfixed to his voice. And at the end of the 8 days, I remember, when he was talking to me, he says, Tarun, I saw your eyes. He says, I saw your eyes for 8 days. He says, I think this is the route you should go. Well, I wasn't convinced even then, to be honest. I said, yeah, whatever, I'll take the certification and I'll see what. And I started coaching at the KGA and, developed, I realized I had a flair for it. I enjoyed interacting with people. I especially enjoyed interacting with junior golfers. And that's how the whole journey, started. And tried to kind of play and teach at the same time. It didn't work out. And, then I had to take a hard call a couple of years later to go full-time into teaching. And yeah, I haven't looked back since. I've enjoyed every minute of the journey. I've met some amazing people. It's been a great ride.
Wonderful. In fact, I think Donato's done a lot of good things for Indian golf. And I think we were at a camp together with him in Bombay at one point, many, many years back.
Yes,
but tell me, Tarun, how have you worked towards improving your understanding of what goes into the coaching process? Because one thing is to play good golf, the other is to be able to teach good golf. And there's a difference between instruction and coaching. So how did you go about it?
Right. So I've had some good influences, in my career. I think my first big influence was Brandon D'Souza because he took me on, as a student, but he was more like a mentor. And I think I learned a lot from him, especially the gift of the gab. I think he's great at speaking
It's
in
brilliant.
absolutely brilliant. But he taught me a lot about life as well. I think that's so important. And I also then realized that that's what really coaching really is. And my playing career wasn't the most successful, and I think Brandon also at that time was starting out Tiger Sports, so he was a bit busy. And but we had a great time. 2 years, I learned a lot from him. And between 2003 and 2007, when I got my certification, I just taught a lot. I just stood on that driving range and I taught, and I was troubleshooting. I was making a lot of mistakes. I know that I had a lot of bakras who I could make the mistakes with, and we all do that as teachers. And but those 4 years set the foundation for me. And then 2008-9, I met the TPI gang. We did the TPI certifications. And 2011, I think when Sharmila, who was my student at that time, qualified for the European tour, I started traveling with her and I began to kind of see what's out there in the world of coaching. And thanks to Dilip Thomas, I went and met Phil Kenyon for putting. I went actually with Sharmila to kind of work on her putting, and I saw his indoor studio, and I was amazed. I was like, I want this. And the funny thing is, I've recreated exactly the same studio at my academy, similar.
Wonderful.
And I began training with Phil Kenyon for putting at that point. And then through the years, I've gone and met a lot of great coaches. Phil Kenyon, I've done my certifications with him. Andy Plummer, who is my current swing guru, the stack and tilt system, and James Ridyard for short game. So I do a lot of traveling. I do a lot of reading as well to try and keep up with what's going on in the world, because everything's changing. And how research is really going deeper and deeper. It's amazing how you have now specialized coaches. And when I first met Phil Kenyon, and I was amazed to hear that he only teaches putting, but there's so much to putting. It's amazing, And then when I met James Ridyard last year, he teaches only wedge play. And I did a 16-hour seminar with him purely on wedge play, and realized that wow, there's so much more to just this. So there's so much out there. But again, you've got to learn how to distill it and kind of give it to your students how much and that comes through experience. But yeah, the learning never stops. And for me, it's attending these seminars, traveling as much as I can. And there's one thing that I also must point out, that I learn a lot from my players as well. All my good players, when I watch them practice and I actually ask them, why are you doing a certain thing this way? Because not all of them really listen to you, right? Or do things the way you want them to do it. And as a coach, I've learned to kind of step back and learn from them and say, why would Viraj play a bunker shot like this? Or why would Aryan, play a chip shot like this? And that kind of enhances my learning as well. So it's both ways. They learn from me and I learn from them as well.
Wonderful. Very nicely said, Tarun. The fact that you learn from your students, I think it's a wonderful state of mind to be in, because the more you learn, the more you're also able to share. But tell me, so how did this idea of creating this fabulous ecosystem, the Tarun Sardesai Golf Academy, come around?
So it's been a long time dream, Digraj. I went to boarding school, and I was in boarding school for 5 years. And I think what I gained from boarding school, those were the best 5 years of my life. It was a regimented life. It was a routine life, and there was a lot of discipline. Now, I went to boarding school as a very mediocre student, very mediocre at sport. But by the time I finished in boarding school, I was the captain of the cricket, hockey, football, tennis, table tennis team. I was coming first in class, getting 90s, and I wasn't breaking a sweat. And I realized that it was just that environment that brought out the best in me. And that's where I realized that if I wanted to create good players, which has always been something that I've been passionate about, is that I've got to create that environment for the player with discipline and routine. And in today's world, it's hard. I mean, for most kids, just staying in a routine is difficult because there's so many distractions. So that's where that idea came about. I've always wanted to do it, and it finally came into fruition in 2015-16, where I was able to set it up at Zion Hills, and I'm enjoying every minute of it.
So tell me, I mean, you've created a model coaching ecosystem, I would call it a model learning ecosystem. Very nicely put that, how school was able to bring in the best out of you through rigor, discipline, and many things. Tell me what makes TSG Academy so special?
Yeah, I've been able to create a similar environment that I had in boarding school. And it's so number one is discipline. And today, if you want to be a world-class sportsman, you've got to be disciplined. And today a lot of kids who are in their teens are not very good with following rules, are not very good with following their routine. But when you're in an environment that has routines set out for you, laid out for you, and there's a bit of discipline involved, I mean, magic happens. And some of my top players, when they came in, didn't like the routine too much, but they've seen what it's done to their games. So one of the most important things I think is, you're rubbing shoulders with the best of the best day in and day out. They are all of a similar mindset. They're all waking up at 5:30 in the morning. So if you don't get up in the morning, you feel left out. If you don't hit your gym session, you feel left out. There's a lot of competition. Elite players are competitive by nature. So if you go to the gym and someone's bench pressing 70 kilos, the other guy saying, I can do 85. And they're pushing themselves. We play table tennis every now and then, and even on the table tennis table, there's so much competition. So I think this whole environment is nice because one is it's away from the city, and the nice part is there are no distractions. So in boarding school, I think it's not allowed to actually leave campus. And today, if you tell a kid you're confined to one campus, they're going to say, hey, you know what? That's not possible. I need to go out to the city. I need to go to the malls. But that's what we've been able to create here. So even when our professionals come in, like Viraj and Trishul, it's funny because they don't complain about not being able to leave the campus, and they're working hard. It's a tough day. The other thing is, I feel that what we've got here is there's no time wasted. We're able to use the day more effectively because the kids don't have to travel 1 hour from home to school and then 1 hour back, from school to home, and then 45 minutes to the gym, and then another 1 hour to the driving range. Everything on this campus is a 2-minute bicycle ride away. So the kids are able to, they use their time much, much more effectively. And the other thing about Zion Hills, I think the management is fantastic. They let me do whatever I want to do at the academy. And that's why I've really benefited, because
I think it's wonderful, Tarun.
Yeah. And they let me do what I want to. I think every coach needs to be backed by a world-class facility. And I feel that's been a big blessing for me, because Zion Hills, I hope you visit someday, is absolutely fantastic. We've got the best greens in the country. We've got one of the best driving ranges. We've got 50,000 square feet of short game area to practice. It's nothing short of like, I would say, a mini paradise. And another thing that we've also started this year is, within this environment now, we are starting to train the new coaches. So we've also got a coach internship program happening, where coaches actually get to do hands-on learning. So all of that put together, I think this whole ecosystem of education, not just in learning golf, but learning how to teach golf as well, is, to me, my dream coming to full fruition.
Wonderful, Tarun. We wish you all success, because frankly, it's the first of its kind in the country. And I hope many more people get inspired by what you're doing and replicate it across the country, because that would be a boon to Indian golf for sure.
I think so too. I think we have so much potential, Digraj. You know it. You yourself run a junior program. You're seeing the talent out there, even in Mumbai. And I'm hoping to work together with you, on that in the future. I know we've spoken about it the last time I was in Bombay as well.
Yes, most certainly.
And I think that if we had a system, if we put a system in place, a proper system in place, because we have to face it today. Education is a limiting factor. The education system, not education itself. Today at my academy, the kids go to school for 3 hours a day, and it's not that they're not getting educated. You don't need to spend 8, 10, 12 hours a day in school if you're pursuing, a sport. And like I said, sport is education itself. It teaches you so much. And I see the future of our sportsmen going through a system like this. Whatever they take up in life, because of their disciplined lifestyle, they'll do well and they'll be successful individuals. Whether they make it as a golf professional or not is a different issue. So I think definitely I'd look forward to, more people taking up this mantle. And, I'll tell you, it's not easy. I have to tell you that taking care of kids, we have 31 kids at the academy, and it's a full-time job. We're working, we're on our toes 24/7. Kids have issues. We're taking care of boys and girls together on the same campus. Thankfully, we've built a wonderful team so that we can kind of rest easy and not worry about it. I've got a great coaching team. I've got a great team who handles the students and player management. I've got a great sports science team who handles their fitness. I've got a great nutrition team who handles the nutrition. So I really can focus purely on the golf side of it. But yes, somebody, when you do it, it requires a lot of commitment. And I'm hoping that, in the future, we'll see more of these. I would love for there to be one in every zone. And if just imagine if we had 75 players in each elite academy in every zone, we won't have just one Anirban Lahiri out there or one Aditya Ashok out there. We'll have 20 of them out there. And then you're looking at a realistic chance at a major championship. Right now,
completely agree, yeah.
Right now, it's all on Anirban's shoulders, or Aditi's shoulders, or maybe Shubhankar's shoulders, to go out there and win that major. But there's so many young guys with potential now. They just need a little bit of a push and the right kind of an environment, and they'll get there. So parents, I think they're a little worried about the education side, and we wanted to take care of that aspect. So, your kid will still get an education, and you can always leverage your golf to get a scholarship abroad if you're good enough. But the thing is, you have to get good enough early enough. You can't wait today to finish 12th standard and say, Digraj, I'm going to take it seriously now. It's not going to work, right? Because then you're going to start thinking, I'm 23, I'm still on the amateur circuit. It's tough. It's tough. And I feel bad for all these young golfers because they're so passionate and they would do anything. If you ask them to eat mud, they'll eat mud to get on the PGA Tour. But you have to get good at the right time, which is why I'm always of the opinion that you must start early. If you have to move into alternative education, do it early. For me, it's early in, early out, right? So you start in the 8th standard, by 10th standard, you will know whether you've got it or not. And if it's not happening, then move on to regular education. I think I would like for the parents to kind of look at it a little differently, from now on. Say, don't wait till 10th or the end of 10th to say, okay, let them take it seriously. Do it now.
Tarun, well said. I've used this line very often that India is a land of Arjuna, Acharya Dronacharya, and the skill sets that are required for golf are not very different. So we have the potential, we have the talent, we've done it before. I think we'll definitely do it again, and we'll do it continuously. So academies like this are going to help the country. So keep it up, stay focused, and I'm sure good things are going to happen. Let's just get to the instruction side of it. I want to ask you a question about the golf swing. What are the things that you look out for in a golfer when you start working for him?
So, in 2016, I met Andy Plummer, and I think it completely changed my outlook on the swing technique for the better. The stack and tilt system, I think, is the best system in the world for teaching today. And I'm not only saying it because I use it. I think I would love for this country to explore it more. Yes, it does have a funny reputation. I understand that it causes injury and things like that. But trust me, if you really get to know the system, and Digraj, I'm hoping to share that with you as well sometime. It's a phenomenal system to train. So what it does is it just basically makes your diagnostic skills so on point, whether you're looking at a beginner or whether you're looking at a tour pro. You've got the problem figured out and the solution figured out in record time. And so if I look at a regular player or a better player, it's more or less the same thing, pretty much. And the beauty of stack and tilt is it's a system which is adaptive. It's not that you have to only swing it one way. There are pieces you can put in depending on where the player is having an issue. So you're not going to see every stack and tilt player swinging it the same way. Unfortunately, yes, like I said, it's misunderstood. I get a lot of questions from parents as well saying, I've heard that this causes injury. Funnily, stack and tilt players get the least injured. But unfortunately, the right kind of research is not out there right now. So I think Andy's done a great job. It's really helped me turn my coaching around completely. And when you look at better players or when you look at tour pros, I think they all have the same objective, right? They all want to get better. They all want to play to their potential. And I think it's very important to understand where they're going wrong. So if you look at the average club golfer today, right? They struggle with hitting the ball clean. They struggle with the direction control. So obviously with him, the operation is a little more difficult because also you're looking at the club golfer who doesn't have time to practice because he says, Digraj, I can come to you once a week, but apart from that, I can't really practice. So you have to give me something that really works. Whereas the tour pro or the serious junior will put in the work. So, I think it's all about understanding the player and their objectives And for me, I'm very clear that when a player comes to me, I'm very honest. Because people have been honest with me, I think it's only fair that I'm honest with them and say, this is going to take you 6 to 8 months. And a lot of people give me these looks of incredulity and say, 6 months? I don't have 6 months. But the funny thing is, you do have 6 months because you're going to play golf for the rest of your life. And if you can just sacrifice 6 months of your life to hit the ball straight with a nice, powerful draw, what's the issue? And why am I saying 6 months? Is because you can only practice once a week. There's a limitation there. I don't want to lie to you and say, yes, I'll figure this out for you. And, by next week, you'll be winning the club championship. It doesn't really work that way. And funnily, with the tour pros, and they take less time because they're much more used to practicing and making changes. So the assessment is usually the same. You want to play to your potential. What are the issues? But hey, let's look at timelines for me. I think it's very important because I would rather under promise and over deliver than the other way around. I'd rather say 8 months and then do it in 3, and then rather than saying 2 months and do it in 9. So I think once we get the player to understand that, and you have to have faith in yourself to be able to say that to somebody, because oftentimes they'll go to another coach and say, he's saying 8 months, I don't have time. But I've lost a few students, I must admit, because then I'm okay with that, because at least my conscience is clear that this is what I can do with you, and there's a certain limitation, and that's how we work.
Well said, Tarun, and I think that's a huge value statement you made right there, that you need to be honest with these guys. And some people are looking for instant gratification, and there are consequences to that. But I think it's a process of learning for everybody. So as long as you stick to what you're doing and it's going to, deliver results, hopefully there'll be enough results to have more people making a beeline. Coming to the swing again, what do you think, Tarun, are the fundamentals to a good golf swing? I mean, irrespective of systems.
That's a great question. I think that's a great question. Again, coming back, and what I learned from was amazing, because if you actually look at it, there are actually just 3 main fundamentals in the golf swing. And I firmly believe it because I'm seeing it day in and day out. So the first fundamental is a solid strike on the ball, right? You want to make a solid strike on the ball every time. And today, if you look at most club golfers or even some top amateurs, they don't make a solid strike all the time.
Yeah.
Second fundamental is power. You have to have a swing that generates power. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to play and enjoy your golf. You want to be able to hit that drive long enough, or at least to your potential. I mean, you have guys who have the capability of hitting the ball 270 yards, but because of poor technique, hit it about 220. Right? And the third one is just curvature control. The thing is, 3 fundamentals, and you look at the grip, you look at the setup, you look at the ball position, which are termed as fundamentals today. I don't believe they're fundamentals, to be honest, because every top pro has a different grip. Look at Dustin Johnson and look at Tiger Woods, and you'll see, and every player has a different setup. Every player has a different method of aiming. So those are actually variables. You can't really call them a fundamental if everybody has something different. So for me, the 3 commonalities between all these good players is a solid strike on the ball, right? Curvature control and power. And if you have all these 3 things, right, you can play golf at pretty much any level. Now, for me, when a player comes in, be it a club golfer or an amateur or a junior or a touring pro, I look at the 3 fundamentals first. And if I give a player 5 balls and I give him a target, all I do is I record these 3 fundamentals. Has he got power? Did he hit the ball the same way all 5 times? Did the ball curve the same way all 5 times? And with the club golfers, you'll see a huge array of different shots happening. And if you see, like a touring pro, he'll be a little more consistent. But you always find that one of these 3 is out of whack. And for me, any good lesson, and what also the stack and tilt system has taught me, is that any good lesson has to touch upon one of those 3 fundamentals. If I say, you should finish in this position, but it doesn't affect the strike or the curvature control or the power, it's not a good lesson. Right? Because the player hasn't got anything out of it. He's looking better in the follow-through and he's looking much prettier in the follow-through, but he hasn't really improved as a player. So I focus only on those 3, and no doubt the grip, the setup, all of those things do come in. I'm not saying that we never look at them, right? But we look at them in conjunction with what's happening with those 3 fundamentals that I believe in.
Very nicely put. I think you explained that really nicely, and the distinctions are pretty clear. And as studies are evolving, you're getting to know more about what actually is making a difference. You know, what TrackMan has done and many other things have done, the philosophies on ball flight laws, all are evolving as we speak. But Tarun, coming to you, just tell me one thing. Give us some real-time examples of some students that you worked with and, you know, changes that you made. How difficult were they? What kind of results they took? Maybe just as a test case for everybody who's listening.
I think in 2016, June was when Viraj Madappa came to the academy, and he was in a bit of a slump. And he was a great player. I mean, he was number one amateur. He was a number one junior. He was number one amateur while he was still a junior, actually. And hats off to his coach Indrit Balotia, because I think he had set a great foundation.
Wonderful.
But when he came to me, and I think it was Indrit, actually, who's a good friend of mine, and been my mentor of sorts for many years. Said, Tarun, can you take a look at this guy, because I'm not able to figure it out, and we need to maybe a different set of eyes. And Viraj came into the academy, and so I'm a big proponent of definitely of good technique. And Viraj was built into this fantastic player, but he was so powerful, but he had a problem with curvature control. So that's one of the fundamentals I'm talking about. He had a good strike on the ball. He had power for sure, but he was struggling with curvature control. So we knew exactly where we needed to get in. And it was quite an effort for Viraj, because he had been playing for many years with that swing. He was a little vertical in the downswing. He used to have a lot of these pull hooks. And I sat down with him on the first day and I said, it's going to be a task for you. Are you ready? And I think what's great about great players like Viraj is that they're not afraid to change. He says, you tell me what needs to be done. He says, I'm going to do it. And that's all I needed to hear. And it took us a good, I think a year, a couple of years, because in between he also went to the US on a college golf scholarship, and then came back because he really wanted to work on his game, and wasn't getting the time to do it in the US. So we got him to a stage where his club face control was much better. And if you look at most good players, I think it's the club face control issue that goes off. The path remains the same more or less. The club face control goes out of whack. And we really worked hard with Viraj, because Viraj had very, very, very fast, powerful hands, right? But he had a lot of face rotation through impact. And that led to a swing which was very timing dependent. And what we don't want is a swing that's very timing dependent at that level, because you could go from day one hitting 15 greens to day two missing all the fairways and all the greens because your timing is off. So we built his swing up pretty much from scratch, and hats off to him, because he worked really, really hard. And and then I think in August of 2018, he won the Take Solutions Masters in Bangalore. I think became the youngest Indian to win an Asian Tour event. His swing wasn't even at 100% at that point. It was probably at about 60, 70%, but he had reached a certain level of consistency. And most importantly, he had understood his own golf swing. And for me, that's very, very important for the player to understand their own golf swing, to be able to troubleshoot themselves and talk to me like they're a coach themselves. So Viraj today will call me and say, you know what, I think my club face is a little bit shut at P6, or I'm laid off at P4. So we're talking the same language. It's very nice to hear. So for me, that was most important. But hats off to Viraj. And another good example would be Aryan. Aryan, I've worked with him for many years. But he had this problem again of the block right and the hook left, which is a very, very common issue. And we worked really hard to get his swing more, I would say, more connected and more on the grid. The grid is, again, a Staccatel term. It basically swing more on that circle. And we worked really hard on that. And I think he's seen a lot of success with his All India amateur win this year. And I think he's definitely worked a lot harder, because he's not a very powerful guy. He doesn't hit the ball as far, but he's got a great short game. And the thing about these good players is they respond really well to instruction. Once they trust you, of course, you've got to build that trust initially. I'm sure that's important. But they respond really well. So for a good player to kind of change their golf swing takes very, very little time. It just takes a lot more work, which they're willing to do anyway. And Aryan's been one of my, because he was, he's had a great run as a junior, just like Viraj. But I think in the middle of a couple of years ago, he had stagnated a bit. And that's the time we decided that, because, he loves to compete. And because he loved to compete, it was tough to change his swing, because he was always traveling. So I had to kind of get him to sit down and say, Aryan, we need to also focus on your technique a bit, to which he responded. And, today he's the All India champion with a record of having won the stroke play and the match play in the same event, which I don't think anyone's done in the history of the event.
Wonderful. In fact, I quite like the way you acknowledged Indrajit Bharotia for setting the foundations for, and then seeing the way he's evolved, acknowledging that as well, and the process of journey and the process of growth, because eventually, I think it's beautiful because that's the way the ecosystem can support each other and help a player achieve his potential. So very nicely said. And but coming back to you yourself, how is your? I mean, you've said very clearly that how your teaching philosophy has moved towards the stack and tilt. But how did you begin with? Because Donato was more traditional, more Ben Hogan, and more fundamentals. Just tell us a little bit more about that journey of shift, because a lot of players are succeeding with that too at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. And the funny thing is that the players who are succeeding, though, if I were to break down their swings for you, they've all got elements of stack and tilt in there, right? And the beauty of the stack and tilt community, there are 400 of us all over the world, is that we're discussing things every day. We're discussing players, we're discussing swings, we're discussing anatomy. And the thing is that every swing we break down has got elements of stack and tilt in there. So if you look at even Andy Plummer, I've had some really good times with Andy Plummer, and what a great guy he is. And we sat down for a drink some time back, and he told me his story. And, if you look at even Sean Foley, for the example, Sean Foley used to call Andy Plummer every week, because Sean Foley was actually, I would say, just shadowing Andy Plummer when actually I think Sean O'Hare came up to him on the range, and, Andy didn't have time. So Sean went and started coaching him. So all of these coaches today actually are imbibing elements of stack and tilt. And I can't go into detail about it, but primarily it's how the spine moves in the golf swing, the extension, the rotation, the side tilting. And this is what Andy and Mike actually figured out, quite some time back. So the players who are successful today are, if you look at it again, you look at the three fundamentals, they're all adhering to those three fundamentals. They can all hit the ball well, they're powerful, and they can control curvature. But a lot of how their body moves is actually stack and tilt. And because I'm a student of stack and tilt, and it's because I'm an instructor in stack and tilt, I can actually see these things. And I'd love to someday sit with you and actually, Digraj, show you some of the top players who actually, imbibe all of these, whether it's a Shubhankar Sharma or whether it's a Tiger Woods. They all have elements of it in there. And that's what's so great about the system, is you don't have to be a pure stack and tilt player, But yes, starting with Donato was more traditional. I learned a lot by just watching him teach. I learned a lot from Brandon. I learned a lot from you, Digraj, because I remember we spent some time in Bombay as well. I learned from Ajay Gupta and, tried to put it all together. And in the end, did my own research. To be honest, in my initial stages, there was a lot of trial and error. And I evolved because, I began to study the swings of better players and compared positions, which is what I learned. And I started to see some differences, although I couldn't explain them, right? I began to say, what, I need to see you more here, because let's say Justin Rose is here at P7 or P5 or whatever it is. And I evolved myself through talking to other coaches. When I traveled with Sharma on the European tour, I got a chance to meet a few coaches, watch them teach their students on the range. I actually spoke to a few professionals, and I had the great opportunity of meeting Arya Jutanugarn. She is an LPGA player, a major winner. And we actually played together because I was caddying for Sharmila at the time. We played together in Morocco in the qualifiers. And I had a chance to pick her brain on what she works on in the golf swing. And, all of it was pretty similar stuff. And to really strike the ball well, you need to have a stable hub, right? You need to have a very, very stable hub. And that is what stack and tilt is all about. But how do you create that stable hub is what stack and tilt broke down with how the spine actually has to move. So yeah, we spoke about not swaying or whatever, but we used to all still teach the spine still being in flexion. I didn't even know that until I met Andy in 2016. And the funny part is when I came back in 2016 and I just went to all my students, all 30 of them, I said, guys, this is how we're going to do the backswing right now. And everyone looks at me and is like, oh, you're going to learn something new and I'm just going to throw it at us. It was a strange period in my life because they're all looking at me, including Viraj, including Trishul, and saying, he's come back from stack and tilt, now we're becoming stack and tilt players. But the funny thing is, every player within 3 weeks was hitting that ball like they've never hit it before.
Oh, wonderful.
And that's what made the difference. So we've all evolved, and I'm not saying players don't play well without being a stack and tilt player, but I'll show you everybody has elements of stack and tilt in there. And I'm waiting for the day when I can share it with you, because I'm sure you'll
I
also
look
really
forward to that. I completely look forward to that because it'd be
with
great.
all the coaches. I've spoken to so many coaches to come to the academy, and let me just show you what the whole system is, because it's taking me, it's stack and tilt is taking me from here to there as a teacher. And that is what, it's so easy now to actually even diagnose and help a better player, because the system is so strong and powerful. So from teaching weight shift to the right, now we're not teaching that anymore, because the more you shift your weight to the right, the more the hub moves, your spine stays in flexion, you have more chance to actually hit behind the ball or thin it. But unless you really understand it, which is what I want people to do, I want people to understand why we don't teach it anymore, how the spine moves. And, Digraj, even your junior golfers, you just try this, you'll be amazed as to how their ball striking changes.
Great. I look forward to the conversation very, very soon. Okay. Okay. Tell me, what would your advice be to a quality junior, other than technical changes in the swing? I mean, how do you go about the entire process of creating a golfer?
Right. I've had a lot of success with the juniors, right from Aditi Ashok. She's one of my best examples, actually, because I've always believed in discipline, Digraj, and this single-mindedness about what you want to achieve in life. Aditi was a great student because she wrote down everything I said to her, and I always made her maintain a notebook. And one of the first things I made her do was I made her write down her dream on her wall.
Very, very nice.
I said, what do you want to do? And she said, I want to be on the LPGA tour. So I said, fine, let's write it down. And I think till today that poster is probably still in her room. I don't know where in her room it is, but in her house it is, but it's there. And I learned a lot from her as well, as I said. But what I really focused on with her was just purely discipline and documentation and lifestyle. Right? You have to live like a world-class individual to be world-class.
Very nice.
How you eat, how you wake up in the morning, how you think, and never lose sight of the big picture, right? So I remember Aditi went through a lot of turmoil when she was maybe not selected for certain national teams, when she was passed over for scholarships. And I would sit down with her and say, you know what, never lose sight of the big picture. You're going to be on the LPGA tour. Just let's forget about everything else. And the funny thing is that she was so meticulous at that point. And I'm always been a big proponent of being organized. So I introduced her to a fitness trainer called Nicolas Cabaret, who was a French trainer who was in Bangalore at the time. I made her write down every single lesson that we had, which she did very diligently. She recorded all her stats, because I had actually created my own statistics program at that point, because I love data, right? We're a very data-driven academy even now. She would actually call up her parents from, let's say, Malaysia or somewhere to enter the data, because she didn't have internet access over there. And the funny thing is, because she was so organized, she would catch me sometimes, because if I told her something, she would open up a notebook and say, you know what, sir, 2 years ago, you told me something different. And I have it here on record. And that kept me on my toes, But it's just, for me, juniors is about lifestyle. It's about sacrifices, all of which I think Aditi, and she went through a lot of hardship through her life as well. We saw her going through a lot of issues, but, she came through, I think, really, really well. She was super disciplined. And her life outside of golf was very, very, very good. Today, I would advise any junior to see how they can live better, sleep better, eat better, think better. The problem is that outside of golf today, a lot of these junior golfers have other influences. They have their school friends, and which is fine, which is all fine. But the problem is that not everyone is going to understand your journey. So if they've got a birthday party to go to, they're going to say, hey, why don't you come along? We'll be done by 2 a.m, and you can go and sleep as much as you want the next day, not realizing that you're going to lose a day of practice, or maybe even 2, because you're groggy the next morning, and maybe it affects the way you think even the morning after. So I think any junior, forget technique. I mean, technique will come, your coaches will take care of you in that sense. But, if you don't live like a champion, right, how are you going to be one? And don't benchmark yourself based on a win in the national circuit or a win in the South Zone circuit, because that's not the benchmark. The benchmark is, by the time you're 18 years old, your scoring average has to be 70 or better. Now, why 70 or better? Because if your scoring average at 18 is 70 or better, you've got a chance to be a successful professional golfer. Because one of the mistakes that a lot of youngsters are making is that they're turning pro because it's time. I'm 23 years old, I'm 22 years old, and I'm 18 years old, I should turn pro. And they don't realize how debilitating it can be in terms of confidence. Because if you go into a pro circuit when you're not ready, and today the Indian pro circuit is super competitive, and if you start missing cuts, it's just affecting your confidence. So what do amateurs actually talk about today is they talk about, I have nothing left in amateur golf now. I must turn pro because I've played 3 years of amateur golf. But you know what? Be organized. What would a tour pro say? And I remember talking to Anirban about this maybe 10 years ago. And he says, Tarun, I only look at my scoring average. Am I there or am I not there? And scoring average is not about the last 2 tournaments you played. It's about the last 2 years of golf. Have you seen a drop in your scoring average so that if your scoring average, let's say, for example, Digraj today is 72, and if I turn pro, what am I doing? I'm shooting even par in every tournament after 4 days. What am I going to make? Right? It's about going and making a paycheck every time, right? So if you bring your scoring average down to 70, you're shooting 8 under par average in every tournament, you have a chance at a life in professional golf on any tour, whether it's Asian or European. 8 under par is a good score. So how do you get to 70, right? It's not purely technique. It can't be purely technique because then there are so many kids who can swing the club so beautifully. It is everything around that, right? How much you sacrifice, how much you sleep every day. I'll tell you something, Digraj. Probably 1% of our juniors get 8 hours or more of sleep every night. Okay?
Absolutely.
Because why? Why is it? Because they're on PUBG or they're on WhatsApp till about 10, 11 at night. And they don't realize it because today, what is the kid thinking? A kid thinks I'm invincible. I just won the last national championship. I'm there. I've arrived. But I feel that they need to really look deeper into themselves and also, Digraj, have someone who tells them the truth. Boss, you're not good enough just yet. You got a long way to go. So even at the academy, when we've taken away everyone's cell phones. And there is a huge resistance to this, even from young man like Aryan Rupa Anand, who always keeps asking me, sir, can I have my cell phone for half an hour more? I say, Aryan, don't lose sight of the big picture here, right? And the funny thing is that it was in Bombay in October. I remember just after I met you last time, I think when he was playing the amateurs, that I sat down with Aryan and I noticed that he was just not following his routine. And I sat him and I gave him a piece of my mind. And I said, you know what, if this is not your cup of tea, let's not do this. Let's not go in there with expectations to get to the PGA Tour. And I think that conversation really hit him. And from that day, he followed every single process that we've put down to the tee. He won the very next week and won the All India Amateurs. So today, kids will be kids, right? And that's why people like you, Digraj, are so important in their life, is because you've got to tell them the truth. You've got to say, you know what, you shot 4 and 5 over par and you won this East Zone Championship, but that's nothing, right? You've got a long, long way to go if you want to be on the PGA Tour. Because today, Digraj, for the kids, what is their favorite statement? I want to be like Tiger Woods, or I want to be on the PGA Tour. Now, I think it's up to you and me and coaches to explain to them the gravity of that statement. You're saying you want to be a PGA Tour pro. Great, that's fantastic. Tell me, can you give up your cell phone for 10 years? And they look at you like you're mad. They're like, why should I give up my cell phone? What does that have to do with getting to the PGA Tour? The funny thing is that the kids at the academy today, because they don't have the cell phone, they've started reading books because they've got no choice. They've started sleeping more because they've got no choice. They've started focusing better in practice because they know they can't immediately open the golf bag and look at the cell phone and see how many messages they missed, right? It's magical. So if our youngsters today can really understand that technique aside, learn how to live like a champion, right? You will get there, right? If you can just do that. And how do you live like a champion? Talk to your coach. What do I need to do? Talk to your fitness trainer. What do I need to do? Talk to anybody who's been there already. Talk to Anirban Lahiri. Listen to his conversation. That's all it is. And if the players can transcend themselves to that level of living, India is going to see 10, 20, 30 major champions in the years to come. Today, it's a little too easy, right? And I tell you, parents also, they make it too easy for their kids, right? And I would tell all parents, boss, make life tough for your kids. There are parents today who are waking their kids up when they're 15 and 16 years old for a tournament. I'm like, let them sleep, let them miss the tournament, let them feel the pain. That's how they're going to get there. So change your life, guys. Look at how you live your life. And the first test is, and I'm telling you, it sounds really, really strange. Give up your cell phone, guaranteed success. And you'll have, it's just like giving up smoking, you'll have like withdrawal symptoms. You'll be like, oh my God, I need to look at my phone, but it's there. So what we do with our players is we let them travel with their cell phones, but the test is, can you keep it off? Keep it in your pocket, but keep it off. That is a good test. And everyone's benefiting. So that's my plea to all you coaches out there is get strict. Say parents as well, take that cell phone away. Oh, but then my kid will get very upset and whatever. So what? If he gets upset and he wants a cell phone, let's forget this dream of being a PGA Tour player. Let's just be the club champion. And that's okay too, right? But be clear. Where do you
Arun,
want?
beautifully answered. I think in this last few minutes, you've said such wonderful things. The story of Aditi, the discipline that she's put into her system, the importance of just having this time to be able to do things which are important to build your core. I think another advantage that you have is you have fresh air there. The
Yeah.
sleeping better, the kind of things that are available. You're right. This distraction the kids have, the peer pressure right now, and a lot of the negativity that comes through the phones and the kind of stuff they're imbibing subconsciously without even realizing is coming through. So great examples, and I'm glad you said what you said, because I hope whoever listens to this and watches the recordings in the future will take note of what you said and actually do something about it. So phenomenal. Thanks very much for saying all these things. Let's get to the next one. Tell me, when you've looked at a couple of players, and this answer actually follows the previous answer that you've given, what are the commonalities that you're seeing other than the technical parts of the golf swing that good players have with them as a commonality?
I can talk about the players that I've worked with, and from Aditi to Aryan to Trishul to Viraj, to all the good players I've worked with. And I think the one thing they all had for sure was discipline, right? And they, whether it was, and if they were told to do something, it was done. There was never a time where I had to tell them something twice or thrice. And today's kids are a little different because you have to really kind of get into a reason with them, and say maybe because if you sleep more you'll do this. But for me, most good players, they need to be told only once or twice, and that's it. It's part of their life. The second thing with good players is, and players who made it, is I feel they've got a very intrinsic love for the sport. So what I mean by intrinsic love for the sport is that there's no, it's not that I'm not playing golf because I want to drive a Ferrari. I'm not playing golf because I want to someday, have a huge mansion. I'm playing golf because I love this sport so much. So when you love the sport so much, they love practice just as much as play. And that's the thing. And so when you see this, when you tell them to hit 500 balls, they're happy to hit 500 balls, right? And the other thing with these good players, I would say, is that they have immaculate short games and they give their short games enough importance. Today, it's a power game, right? And we know that. And so if you look at any average driving range, the only competition out there is, hey, boss, check this out. And they hit the driver and it'll go like 300 yards. Wow, have you seen that? Nobody's going to say, hey, you know what? I'm going to hold 3 chips out of 5. Come on, let's go to the chipping green. No one's really saying that, especially as juniors. So love for the sport, but a much deeper love for the short game. And any good player, if you talk to them, all their games started from around the green. And if you look at Viraj, who's one of the guys I've seen who's got a phenomenal touch around the greens, I think he grew up around the greens. And if I ever want to embarrass myself, I just go and have a chipping competition with him, because I can't even get close. And I'm not bad. I'm fairly good. So these 3 traits, I think, are very, very critical for you to be, a great player. And I see that a lot. There's a lot of these guys. So when a kid is younger, it's best to actually get them going with this thought process early on. And that's why I love to start kids much earlier on, because if we start kids, if I went to boarding school in the 6th grade. So by the time I was in the 10th, I was super disciplined as a human being, right? So if we can get kids into this disciplined lifestyle early on, right? You're going to see magic. And India, we're going to produce golfers in the future for sure. Like I said, our physique is built for golf. I really don't see our physique built for singles in tennis or seeing any of our guys playing for Manchester United. I see us winning a lot of accolades in golf, and I think we're in a great time in India right now where sport is on the up and up. I know it's a bad time right now with the corona, but I think a lot of parents are also more open now to their kids taking it up seriously. You have kids who are 9 years old who are telling their parents they want to quit school and play golf today. So becoming a champion, I feel, if you really love the sport, and that's what we as coaches also should do, I think the guy is to just develop that love for the sport initially, and if we can do that, we have golfers for life, for sure. We have people who are going to be active for life, and then we have future champions as well.
Very nicely said. I think the way you summed up the three critical, fundamentals to all these good players have, discipline, love for the sport, great shot game. And the interesting thing is, Tarun, I've spoken to so many people recently and in the past as well. They all resonate with exactly the same things. And one of the things which, you already answered it, but what I see is a lot of kids thinking only that hitting balls is the answer to becoming a good player. And it's only the golf swing that makes everything happen. But, many players have said that's maybe only 10 or 15% of the game. The balance is what's happening around it.
Yeah. So, and, one thing also I forgot to mention with these good players, the guys, that they're all very single-minded about their approach, and they have no fear of failure. Failure is not an option, right?
Yep.
Very important. So they're so disciplined in their mindset that whether it's a single drive over with water or it's a putt for 10 feet, there's no fear of missing it. Their focus is only on the one and not the zero.
Very nice. Very nice. Thanks for highlighting that as well. Okay, Tarun, what are your thoughts on fitness? I mean, let's just hear a little bit more about what you're doing for the kids there.
Good
How are you going about it?
A very, very good question. While golf is being spoken about as a power game, right? I think a lot of people are breaking down because they're trying to hit the ball longer. Right from players like Trevor Immelman, maybe a few others as well, actually lost their games because they were told they need to hit the ball longer. And you've got to hit the ball as far as your potential is. And you don't look at a Dustin Johnson and Rory McIlroy because they're anomalies, right? And as a kid, right, naturally you'll hit your growth spurt and you will hit the ball further. If you have good technique, you'll hit it even further than maybe the average kid your age. But I don't think fitness should be looked at as I need to hit the ball longer, so I need to get fit. No. Fitness to me is very, very simple. Right? You want a 30-year golfing career if you want to be a pro golfer. And if you want a 30-year golfing career, you have to stay injury-free. So fitness has to be done very scientifically from that standpoint primarily. Yes, if you get fit, you will become stronger and you might hit the ball a bit longer. There's no doubt about that. But why we do fitness is purely to stay injury-free through your career as a golfer. And even staying injury-free is very scientific because your fitness team has to make sure that your workload through the year does not spike. Because if your workload spikes, number one cause for injury. Because let's say you're lifting very, very heavy weight. You can lift heavy weight through the year, you won't get injured. But if you're lifting heavy weight and then you suddenly start lifting lighter weight for about a week and then come back to heavier weight, that's where the injury happens. So your fitness team is critical. And that's why I always say, always build a great team of experts around you, is that your workload has to be monitored, right? And if your workload is monitored correctly, you're doing the right kind of things, yes, you will get stronger. When you're on tour, you have to maintain. But the key about fitness is that why we do it is to stay injury-free. You want a long career. Today, we have kids like, even if you look at Shubham Jaglan, who's struggling with back injuries. You have young kids who are 15 and 16 who are struggling with back injuries. That shouldn't be the case. So my thing would be, don't wait for something bad to happen to get going with your fitness. Right? Fitness should be a part of your life if you want to be a great golfer. But scientifically done fitness, not just go to a gym and lift weights. And a golfer's body is different from a tennis player's body, is different from a cricketer's body. If you want to build that beach body so that you can take your shirt off and go hang out and go out on the beaches, that's a different type of fitness altogether. So that's not what you should be looking for. It should be very specific to golf. And my only plea to all golfers out there is understand your bodies, understand your strengths, your weaknesses, your mobility issues, your stability issues, so that you know why you're doing what you're doing. Even when I teach the golf swing, I'm ensuring that my kids understand what I'm doing and why I'm doing it so that they're convinced. So if you look at fitness from a standpoint of hitting the ball 300 plus yards, I don't agree with it because that can hurt you. And many players are getting hurt because they're trying to hit the ball longer. Do it within reason. You will get stronger and you will hit the ball to your potential provided you have good technique. Just stay injury free. Use fitness as your way of staying injury free so that you have a long and successful career?
Again, good distinction right there. Very important, and it's important to start working on it now than later, because this is a time to build the fundamental.
Absolutely.
Tarun, there was a question here just now from Brandon. It actually resonates with the question I was going to ask you. And he says that a positive mindset is very important according to him. And I think he's absolutely right. He's also given a few compliments to you in the beginning. So I'm going to go back there a little later. But
No, he's right. He's very right. A positive mindset, is very. That was one of my weaknesses actually as a player. But yeah, he's very true. He's very right. You need to have a positive mindset. But funnily, even a positive mindset takes discipline, right? And if you're not disciplined about the way you think, you're never going to have a positive mindset all the time.
true.
So all boils down to the same thing. If you're disciplined in your life, and if you're told to have a positive mindset and you're disciplined and you hit a bad shot, you're not going to worry about the next one, because your discipline will tell you, hey, you know what? I've been told to do this. I'm just going to follow it.
It's a very good correlation. Again, a very important correlation right there. But tell me, what are you doing, and at what stage do you start working on the mind for the kids who have in the academy?
That's a good question. Me and my coaching team, I think we work a lot on the mind. In fact, we actually now even measure the players' mindsets in competition. So we've developed systems where my players can actually, I can even tell, because they have to give me data as to which aspect of the game is weak in terms of the mind. Is it your driving, your approach shots, your wedge play? And we can actually do a correlation and see how practicing a better mindset actually helps them. Now, the mental side of the game is, again, purely discipline. So because in my academy, we measure everything. And if I know that a player is having an issue with driving, right, and usually it's always the fear of failure. It is nothing else. Today, if you look at the mindset of any good player, the bad shots come from a fear of failure on that shot, a fear of a negative outcome. So all we do is, in the academy, what we do is we create simulations. So we get the players to actually pretend like they're in a situation and go through the entire pre-shot routines, go through good body language patterns, and hit the shot like they were actually in a tournament. And the funny thing is that the better they get on the driving range with that, the better they are able to perform. So I don't think that the mental side is a huge science that needs to be broken down. The mental side of the game is purely discipline. And the funny thing is, just with body language, we're able to change people's thought processes, right? Now, how do you take the fear of failure away? Not easy for someone who's coming from a slump, who's had a tough time the last few years. But again, it's a simple explanation of, hey, you know what? So let's focus on what you need to do rather than what you should not do. So, for example, one of the most important things I use is a concept I call the strong finish. A strong finish is nothing, Digraj, but the player stands in a strong body language position after the shot, irrespective of where the ball is gone. Now, what that does is that takes away the anxiety from the shot, because hey, my coach has told me I don't need to focus on where the ball's gone. I need to focus on myself and how I'm standing after the shot. Seems a bit strange, but funnily, because the player's focus goes away from the outcome and back into the process, right? He stops being afraid. And
very nice.
How do we judge ourselves? So what we train our players in the academy is to judge yourself not on where the ball went, but based on how good your process was. So whether you shoot a 10 over par or a 6 under, if your process was good, you're coming off the course really happy and in a positive frame for the next round. So doing your best, giving it everything is important. I think awareness is critical. We really work on building awareness. Today, most players are nervous, are nervy, but they don't even know they are nervous. Or they don't even know what nervousness feels like or how to counter it. So if we just take the focus of the players and we train them to take the focus of the players from the outcome to the process. Not easy to do, but again, that takes discipline. My coach has told me to do this, so I'm only going to do this. So we actually use tournaments for this. Now, most players go to a tournament to win, to do well. Fair enough. But our players go to a tournament to test. How good are my processes? And how good would I rate it after my tournament? So we do a tournament debrief after the tournament's over. Were your processes good? Yeah, I know you played 27 over par. Were your processes good? Yeah. Was your body language great? Yes. Then we've achieved something. Because then that 27 over is going to be a 5 under in 5 years. But if you shoot 5 over par with poor processes, right, hitting the ball, being scared of the outcome, but just managing to make chip and putt and shoot 5 over, you have no chance in the future. And that also reminds me, I remember when Aditi was about 9 years old, we were playing in KGA. I was there with her dad, and it was the 5th hole in KGA, and she hit a drive, and then there was a water hazard in front. It's a par 5. And her dad said, Aditi, just play safe, play it short of the water hazard. And I said, Aditi, you will never do that ever again in your life. And I called the dad aside, and I called her dad, and I said, Ashok, you are never going to tell her to play safe in her life, because that is not what's going to get her into the LPGA tour. And you know what? He was a good man. He listened. Aditi hit about 3-4 balls in the water. I think the 4th or 5th one went over. And today, I'll tell you, she's one of the most aggressive players I've seen. She doesn't hit the ball far, but every shot is hit with a certain amount of aggression that's unbelievable sometimes. And that's what I feel has helped her get on the LPGA and stay there. So that mindset, that disciplined mindset, you need to first master it on the driving range. And people on the driving range are so casual these days, and that's where we make a difference. So at our academy, players have to document every single practice session so that they know what focused practice is. And the funny thing is, it's taking them 2 hours to hit 30 balls, but it's a real fruitful session. And then they're able to transition that to the driving range. So the mental side has to be mastered on the driving range first, through simulations, through pretending. Many players say, sir, you know what, I don't feel nervous when I'm on the practice range. I mean, even though you're telling me to pretend like I'm nervous, I don't really feel nervous. But hey, you've got to get better at that so that you really feel what it feels like when you're actually out there. And then suddenly the player's on the first tee box, he's feeling all the same feelings, but he's been there before 10,000 times. So it doesn't matter anymore. He's going to go out there and play well. And funnily, Aryan, it's a good example because Aryan is very, very outcome oriented on the putting green. He loves putting, but he also loves to hold putt so much that he can't stay still after he hits the putt. And some weeks before he won in Ahmedabad, that was a process we worked on. I said, listen, you will focus only on body language. And he putted like a demon in the All India Amateur Championship, coming from behind on every single match. So there is a difference that can be made on the driving range itself. But players need to give more importance there to their mind. The course should be just a flow. It should just be a flow because they've done this 20,000 times on the driving range.
Wonderful. I think, again, a wonderful lesson here for everybody who's listening, the importance of process, the importance of discipline, the importance of documenting, and that's another thing I was going to come to you a little later, but maybe it's important to do it now. I've been a stats student myself, big believer in the process of stats. I should correlate. For 5 years, I actually wrote every single shot I hit, either on a range or on a golf course. So I know how much difference it made to me. And I was correlating thoughts with the way the results were happening. So tell me one thing. I mean, you initially devised your own process. Now you're using your existing software. But tell us a little bit more and the importance of, keeping stats, assessing them, and using them.
Yeah, so we do. I've always been a proponent of stats. Right from the time I actually developed my own stats program, which was called Trace. And I think the IG used that for a couple of years under Digraj Singh. And then I moved on to an Australian software called Shots to Hole. And now I'm actually building my own software because not only am I documenting performance in competition, at my academy, we document practice and really deep. So if I give you an exercise to do a wedge play drill, you're going to tell me what your average miss was. Was it left, right, short or long, right? And what your average contact was. Was it good or were you hitting more shots thin or heavy and things like that? So if I can just share my screen, Digraj, for a second, can I do that?
Yeah, please. Would love to see that. Yeah.
So if you look at all these, I'm not sure. Can you see my screen?
Yeah, it's all the other slides have come through. I think if you just share one of them, it'll get a little clearer.
Yeah. What I'm trying to show you is these are all the metrics that we kind of capture on all the players, right?
Wonderful.
And, I have different Excel sheets where I capture different things. In fact, if you look at the physical training one here, this is the training diary where every player actually captures an entire day. So my fitness team can actually predict injury. That you know what, last week your load, you were overloaded or there was inconsistency in the load. And so, you're at a risk of injury. Coming to simple practice drills, we do on-course practice drills. For example, here, I have Aryan's bunker shot practice drill. And this is where we send the players on the golf course and we get them to document their success rates. And funnily, if you look at Aryan on average, right, he's about the same in practice as he is in competition. So he knows that if his practice improves, his quality of practice improves, he's going to improve, in competition as well. So all of this put together, every little thing that we do, and there's something else that I developed this year, which I think is where we actually get the players to document their mental state in tournament. Look
Very
at this
nice. Yeah.
player right over here. Okay, you can see his success rate was very low in chipping, and this is the mental success rate, right? And this is what he found in New Zealand, and he tried to improve that. And at the very next tournament where he finished, I think he finished third, shooting 16 under par. His chipping moved up to 100% because he knew exactly where he needed to focus when it came to the mental side of the game.
Excellent.
So all of this is what I like to kind of record. And I know a lot of the players sometimes find it a little bit tedious, but stats are so important. But I have realized the importance of statistics in practice, not just competition. And there's a direct correlation between how well you practice and how well you actually perform. So my players are very busy at the academy, actually documenting day to day how good their practice is. And funnily, it's correlating to what they're playing. So while we look at the performance statistics, definitely, and we want to improve something, we just focus on the practice side of it. So we have technical practice at the academy, but we also have performance practice. And we do about a 3-to-1 ratio there for the players who are already established, and maybe a 1:1 ratio for the players who are still learning. But even our young kids at 9 and 10 are learning how to document. It's a discipline that we have at the academy, and I'm very, very, very anal about it. I pull them up all the time because all of this is on a folder that I share with the player. And this is what I'm actually now building into a software, and I'm hoping to share it with all academies like yours, so that you can also benefit from all this quite amazing stuff. And when a player looks at numbers, he doesn't argue with you. If you say, you should practice, but no, so I practice my bunker a lot. But if I say, hey, you know what, look at the number of hours you put in bunkers, or look at your success rate in bunkers, it's not the best, because sometimes the players perceive that they're really good at a particular aspect of the game when they're actually not. Maybe he's made a lot of 3-foot putts, who thinks his putting is great, but if you look at his average putts between 10 and 15 feet, it's like 17%. That's 13% less than the tour average. You're not that good. So when a player sees numbers, it's very, very good for them. And and when you collect data as a coach, it's you're talking from a point of authority all the time. So the players can't really argue with you.
Very nicely explained. Sorry, go ahead.
And the other good thing about this is it also tells you, for example, I'll take Aditi again. Aditi never missed a single round entering her stats. And today she's on the LPGA tour, right? It tells you where the player is going. If you have a player who's lazy and says, I don't want to do this, and not entering his data, and we have players like that as well, right? That's fine. But it tells you straight away where that player is going to go. So, I really, really use stats. I use it to my benefit, to the players' benefit as well. Many of them don't understand it initially, but once they get the hang of it, they love it. So, I expect most of my players to travel with their laptops because they have processes they follow, pre-round, post-round. And so really, there's no time to think. You finish your round, you have your lunch, you enter your stats, you go back home, you rest, you come back, you play. It just becomes like a solid routine. And the beauty is sitting here in the academy, I know what every player is doing wherever they are in the world because we're connected online.
Excellent. I'm so glad that you explained it the way you explained it, because the importance of correct practice, capturing the data, giving you a sense as to what and how your thinking is affecting your shot patterns. It can actually transform the way you play and give you the confidence when you're under competition. I'll share this very, very briefly because fortunately, as a kid myself, I got an opportunity. Bambi's father, Bambi Randhawa's dad, came home one day and asked me to start keeping stats. I didn't understand why. But the value of that exercise, and for 5.5 years, every single shot was documented. Then I ended up doing stats in Bombay, and I was able to then add a lot of variances to it, standard deviations to it.
There's lots you can do.
A lot you can do with it. But the bottom line was that you knew what thoughts would cause what kind of result, and that's the basis of good competition golf. So I'm glad you explained this so beautifully, and you're following it so beautifully.
Right.
And I
Thanks.
actually
Yeah.
hope all the kids who are listening will realize that, it may seem very mundane, boring thing to do, but perhaps maybe the most productive thing you can do in addition to whatever else you're doing.
The most productive, 100%. The most, you can have average technique, but good processes, and you'll beat everybody out there.
Excellent. Very nicely explained. Okay, tell me a little bit about diet. I mean, what is your belief on the importance of diet? At what age should somebody start looking at diet? Things like that.
I've been very fortunate to be in Bangalore because we have, I think, the top nutrition expert in Bangalore, Ryan Fernando, and I've had a lot of interactions with him. All my players work with him, and I've learned a lot from him myself. And you can't really stress the importance enough of good nutrition. So starting from, let's say, when a kid today is active, you have a lot of young kids who are active today. They don't really, and I don't know if you know this, but the average Indian kid's growth is stunted by about 2 inches because of poor nutrition. I'll tell you
Wow.
why that is because most kids who are active today, all their food that they eat goes to recovery and nothing goes towards growth, because they're really not monitoring and measuring the amount of calories that they're expending and the calories that they're putting in. So when a kid could actually be 6 foot tall, ends up being only 5 feet 10, right? The second thing is, what is nutrition? Nutrition is knowing what to eat, when to eat, and how much to eat. That is the most critical when you're playing a sport, right? I know I'm feeling, and if you can keep your energy levels the same, your thought processes remain the same. So diet is critical today. Unfortunately, parents tend to overfeed their kids a lot because they feel, the more you eat, the better. And it's not always the case. So investing in a professional to help you is very, very important, especially in the formative years. If a kid's 8 or 9 years old, best time to start nutrition. You know why? Because they're not going to argue with you, right? They don't have their palates are not really set. You take a 16-year-old kid who's used to eating KFC and pizzas and all that, you ask him to have beetroot juice in the morning, he's going to rebel. There's no way I'm going to drink that. That tastes terrible. I'm just going to have my orange juice, which is your Tropicana, which is full of sugar, which I don't even know about. And so earlier you start your kid, the better. Now, not to say you can't start your kid at a later stage, you can. But my advice would always be to go to the expert, right? And all you can do is spend 2 to 3 years with the expert. But even nutrition itself is evolving. And today, all of my players are doing a genetic test. The genetic test is telling you, right, what foods actually work for your body and what don't. And everybody's genes are different. And this is a genetic test which I think tests about 150 different markers in your system to know. Because Djokovic, when he did the test, found out 8 years ago that he was gluten intolerant. And because of that, he was becoming sluggish. He stopped taking gluten, world number one. Right? So even a small thing like that can make a big difference. So it is very, very important. And I think especially fueling on the go, it takes a lot of organization. When you go for a golf tournament, you got to go to the market first, right? You got to buy your bananas, you got to buy your energy bars, you got to buy your energy drink. People say drink a lot of water on the golf course. That's absolutely true, but not fully true. Because if you only drink water, it actually depletes the other salts. So you've got to have a good mix of water, and an electrolyte put together. And that level of organization can only come into your life if you actually work with an expert. So even at our academy, we have a nutrition expert who meets the kids. So funny thing at the academy is our kids weigh their food before they eat it. So you tell a kid that you're only allowed 100 grams of chicken, you can be sure he's taking 300 grams. And because they don't know what 100 grams looks like or what 100 grams. So we have a weighing machine in our dining hall, and because our nutrition expert is looking at each kid's requirements, right? Now, of course, kids will cheat. They will measure 150 instead of 100 and still take the food. But obviously, there's a certain amount of integrity that's required there. But, kids are overdoing the protein today. They're not having enough vegetables. And you always see the kids gunning for the meat first, especially the non-vegetarians, So if I can help them to balance it out, and I think one very good rule would be the 25% rule, where you have 25% carbs, veggies, dal, put that all on your plate, and you're pretty good. So nutrition is super important. I can't stress the importance of it. Knowing what to eat, how much to eat, and when to eat. I think very critical for peak performance. One of the experiences I had was when I think Viraj started working with Ryan, and Viraj used to always have this issue of not having or maybe energy spikes in the last four holes, and I think that's where Ryan really helped him, and he knows exactly what to have now. He feels the dip in energy, and really helps him.
The internet's a little unstable,
Okay.
but in case I drop off, I think I'm coming back also automatically. There's some problem here. Actually,
Yeah.
there's a bit of a storm coming on in Delhi at the moment.
Okay.
But Tarun, that was again wonderful, the information on right nutrition, even though I think I might have missed a few bits of it, and I hope others have been able to get the answer what you were saying. But can you hear me right now?
I can hear you. Yes.
Okay, just coming to just one or two more questions before I start taking a lot of questions, because there's some questions that are floating around, but the information has been so wonderful. I think it's of great value to whoever is listening. So I just want to introduce you to, or maybe just ask you to tell me a little bit more about your take on technology and how much of it are you using at the moment?
Yeah, technology definitely useful. I have the launch model, I have a flight scope, I have the SAM Putt lab in my studio, I have the Capto putting technology as well. I have the SAM balance lab, which is a force plate. But I'll tell you, probably I use it very sparingly, to be honest. It's just a tool that we can use to kind of corroborate what you see. I'm not really a big proponent of selling my academy based on the technology that I have, because that's not what I've used to create players. It's definitely useful. I think that every coach should have technology, but most importantly, should have a good understanding of how to use technology, because if you have technology that you don't understand, it can actually harm the player. If you don't know exactly what to look at, if you're giving information to the player that you don't require, because just a sample lab, which I do with my players a lot, I'm very specific in what I'm looking for, and I need to know what I want to tell the players. Because sometimes you could have a player who has, let's say you have a player who's instinctively aims 2 degrees to the right in putting, and tends to close his club face by 2 degrees and holds all the putts. And I put him on the SAM putt lab, and I see that he's aiming 2 degrees right. I don't want to tell him that, because he's got matchups, he's got tendencies which basically, bring him back online. We really don't need to worry about that. So I could, if I were to, and the thing is, the subconscious is a very powerful thing in a player. And if you tell him that something's off here, or you're not aiming well, you could really ruin him, because he starts to think about it when he's playing. So same with the flight scope or the TrackMan. You've got to be a little careful as to what you and I think people are using the TrackMan today. I would use that primarily for skill development more than anything else, because most of the other things you can actually see using camera and stuff. It is definitely useful. It's helped me improve a lot of players, whether it's their driving or their approach shots or even wedge play today. But I wouldn't overdo it, and I'll be very careful as to the information I share with the player.
Great. Tarun, I'm still continuing to have some internet issues here. Are you able to hear me?
Yes, very clearly, Digraj.
Okay, just maybe one or two questions more. Tell me, how do you go about a very important soft skill element like etiquette, humility? How do you make sure that the kids are, first of all, the belief factor in that, the other is how do you make sure they imbibe it?
Beautiful question there. I think you hit the nail on the head in terms of what I would really look for from my academy. And TSG Academy is all about building great individuals. I think the golf is secondary in a large part. Building great individuals who are humble, who have good manners, who respect their bodies, respect other people, and really building young athletes who are going to be active for life, and hopefully will pass on that to future generations.
Very nice.
So we have a lot of meetings at the academy. We have a lot of player meetings. It's a lot of fun sometimes. And we do various things. We get them to maybe do some public speaking. We teach them things like, so if you look at a TSG Academy student, most often if you say hello to them, they'll take their cap off and they'll shake your hand. Small, simple habits that we try to imbibe. And the humility, the nice part is that we do have players like Viraj and Trishul who come into the academy very, very often, and they stay for long periods of time. And their humility actually rubs off onto everybody else. The other players see how that they're actually just normal human beings who maybe excel at a sport. And I'm very thankful to have players like that who are able to teach my younger kids the right values. So we place a lot of, I would say, impetus on that at the academy for sure. And it all comes from the coach and the coaching staff as well. We don't allow caps indoors. So if anybody's wearing a cap inside, we confiscate it, even though it may be their favorite cap. Many students have lost their favorite caps. So, sometimes just teaching through that little bit of, penalizing them as well. So yeah, I think in general, respect for the game, respect for the golf clubs, all comes through this academy. And, we're hoping that our players will recognize more for the individuals they are than the accolades that they gain.
Again, beautiful, Tarun, because such an important element of the sport. I was showing our kids a video of, Dhoni, the cricketer, and they're asking him, some of the traits necessary to be a good cricketer. And 3 of the things that he answered were respect your elders, be humble, and greet everyone with warmth and respect. Things like that to be a great cricketer. And, it's, and I'm glad you're talking about the same thing, because that's what a good human being is about. And that's what helps him perform when he needs to perform.
And Digraj, that's our challenge, right? That's our challenge as coaches, that we need to focus there first. The golf will always flow, right? But we need to focus there first. A simple thing like, standing up and an older person walks into the room, those things nowadays are lost on these kids because they're so busy looking at their cell phone and playing PUBG or something. They don't even realize when something like that is happening. And they don't realize the impact.
Very true.
Because if you look at it from the other standpoint, today, what's most important for a youngster is to have a sponsor someday, right? To have somebody who backs them. And if you don't have good manners, if you're not really well known in that circle, no one's going to come forward and sponsor you. Today, it's not about performance. To a certain extent, it may be. But if you're not a good individual, you're not somebody who people look up to, you're not a role model, nobody wants to put their brand name on your T-shirt. So that's another important part about becoming an elite player.
Very nice. I'm glad you've stressed on that again. Tarun, there have been some wonderful gems here, but I want to know you to just tell me a little bit more about what your advice would be to parents. Taking into account the journey a child is going to be living, and the role that they play. Obviously, parents are important, but from the golfing perspective, from the sporting perspective, schooling in mind, everything.
Very, very true. I think parents have a tough job, Digraj. They have these young kids today who are telling them, I want to be a professional golfer at 9, 10 years old. The poor parent is caught between, the education space and the golf space, and, the fact that other kids are doing better and other kids are doing worse. And the most important thing is parents talk to parents, right? And that's also very, 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 can have a lot of misinformation happening there as well. So one of the things I would always advise parents to do is talk to your experts and trust them first, rather than talking to other parents. Talk to experts, and you have to. You're the only support system for your kid. And I'll tell you, most parents, at the end of the day, the kid is coming home trying to make you proud. So what you say to them has a big impact on their success in their life, both as a human being as well as a golfer. Talking about the subconscious mind, and I think parents need to understand the power of subconscious mind. Up till the age of 11, your kid's subconscious mind is very, very powerful. So everything that you say to your child up to the age of 11 is getting absorbed in their subconscious. So for example, if your kid comes home after a bad round of golf and you say, why did you play badly? You practiced so much, but still you played badly. The kid is being programmed to believe that he or she is not good enough. So what happens is that when the kid is 16 years old, the subconscious mind has become so programmed that they're standing on the first tee of a golf tournament, and consciously they're telling themselves, you know what, I'm really good. But the subconscious mind comes and erases that and says, no, buddy, you're not. You're useless. And they're never able to play a tournament after that. And this is why you see the so-called burnout happening, right? We've all heard about burnout. Burnout is basically when you're so, you're so caught up with this whole thing about succeeding. So for parents, I would say, I would really like you guys to focus on teaching your kids how to fail and be okay with it, and get up again and try hard again and fail again and fail again and be okay with that and enjoy that process of failure, right? Because that is what's going to make you stronger. Because if you don't get used to failing and be okay with failing, And that is where I feel all of our kids are so programmed for success now. Right? You got to go to IIT, you got to go to IIM, you got to be this, you got to be number one in India. No, you don't. First, let's miss a few cuts, right? Let's hit a few balls out of bounds. Let's hit a few balls in the water so you see it's not that bad. And then when you see the water hazard again, you're not afraid to hit the ball in the water again. So you'll just smash it like, way over. That is what a parent should be. I want to see parents go on the golf course and tell their kids, I want to see great body language. I want to see you walk with your head held high. I don't care about the score. I will never talk to you about the score ever again. That is what I would think that parents can do to really elevate their kids. And whether they make it in golf or not, they may take up a business, they may join your business, but they will not be afraid to fail. They will not be afraid to take tough decisions. Today, when I travel on the tours, and I travel a lot with my players just to see them play, I only see fear of failure. Every kid out there is afraid to fail, right? I want that to change. I want kids going out there on the first tee box, and when everyone else is hitting a 4-iron because it's a narrow fairway, I want to see kids taking a driver and smashing it down the middle because they're not afraid to hit it out of bounds, right? And that comes from home, guys. That really comes from home. So if you as a parent can teach your kids how to think like a champion and not be afraid of anything in life, right? You see parents today, I see a lot of you guys, when you're walking with your kids, if the kid hits a bad shot, your body language changes. You start to put your head down and say, oh, yeah, Obi maar diya. You should say, no problem. Hit the ball out of bounds and hit it 80 yards out of bounds, but hit it without fear. That's what I want. When they come home from a tournament, ask them about the processes. Don't ask them about the score. If you want the score, go to the score sheet. Call up the IGU, they'll send you the score sheet, right? So I think you need to build your kids up, right? And for you parents, you don't realize how powerful your word is. The coach will say stuff, no doubt. The coach is also powerful influence. But your word, parents, is so powerful that if you can just teach your kids how not to fear a negative outcome, we'll have so many more champions in sport today. The thing is that whether it's education, you're afraid to not get 90s. If you're, so what if you get 70s? Did you enjoy writing that exam? Right? So what if you didn't win the tournament? Did you enjoy yourself out there? And then suddenly we have a much healthier generation of youngsters, right, who are not afraid of anything. And if you ask me today, the difference between our players and the players abroad, the way they've been conditioned, have no room for failure. Because in America, the junior golf or the whatever is so competitive that there's no room for that. Either you're great or you're no one. Whereas in India, there is room for that. And we need to change that part. So definitely, that's the first thing. The second thing is invest in your kids, right? Let's spend on good coaching, spend on good nutrition, because don't look at it only from the golf standpoint, right? They will be healthier in general. They'll be active for life. They'll have good, strong physiques, and they'll pass it on to your grandchildren, right? So invest in them in that sense. And don't make everything about success when it comes to scores in golf. Success should be tied to your processes if you can, right? How well you walk. When you walk on the golf course with your child, look at how beautifully they're dressed. Look at how well they greeted people. Look at how they stood up in the dining hall when an elderly gentleman walked into the room. If that has been done, we have achieved something, right? Not if they finish first, second, third, or whether they got a podium finish or not. That is secondary. If it happens, great. That's a byproduct, right? Invest in your children in that sense. And I think your kids will grow up to be great individuals and hopefully champions as well.
Tarun, I just love this answer. I think there was so much value in this answer in itself that my compliments to you. You expressed it beautifully. And I just, because, everything that you've said, there's a lot of measured thinking behind it. And I know it's come from seeing lots of successes in the parenting journey and lots of failures too. But eventually, I think what you're saying is so spot on, because eventually you're trying to build that internal subconscious confidence in a child that the fear of a bad shot or of hitting a bad shot or a double bogey doesn't scare them anymore. In fact, they come back, bounce back, and they say, okay, I can still make a couple of birdies and get back. That attitude, once you get, which comes from the house and from everywhere else, can make a huge difference to a child. So beautifully answered. I really enjoyed that answer. I must tell you, 100 out of 10. That. Okay. One last question for me, and then I'm going to open it up to everybody else. What you opened up there in the academy and the kind of value that, kids are seeing now, it's more than just the golf swing. And I'm talking from an Indian perspective. India was the land of Nalanda. India has had some great education institutions. But let's talk golf for a minute. What can help India become that hub for maybe Southeast Asia, where the best players come and coach here and then go out and take it further? What do we need to do to have more of these happening?
So, the first thing I would say, and I think it's a very important aspect, is that we, all of us Indian coaches, need to get together and work together. Very, very difficult to do because there's a lot of, but I think if all of us taught the same system, and I'm not saying stack and tilt, or no, I'm talking about the holistic system, right? I'm not, if we all could come together and teach the same things, what happens then is that we strengthen as a coaching fraternity, because today there's a lot of competition between coaches, and it's natural, I guess. But if we could all come together, so that if I went to a Digraj Singh, or I went to a Tarun, or I went to a Karan Bindra, or a Indrish Balotia, I'm getting the same information, right? So that same kid, let's say a kid, for example, is really good and gets transferred from Mumbai to Calcutta and then has to work under another coach. If that kid continues on the same methodology, right, rather than having to do a 180-degree turn and then start doing a different philosophy, they'll be much more prone to success. He'll have a much better chance for sure. So one is definitely, if we can have a unified coaching system that all of us follow, a lot of knowledge sharing, between coaches, organized, I think, by the coaching bodies, so that everybody agrees on something. And like I said, every coach may have their preferences, I'm sure, but elements that basically in the end, which benefit the player and the student, right? And today I'm still learning, right? I'm sure if I came and spoke to you and saw how you ran your program, I would learn a couple of things. And if you came over to our academy, you'd say, I want to try this, and that's, I feel, what will strengthen us from the coaching standpoint. From actually being a powerhouse in golf, today, unfortunately, a lot of corporates are not keen to fund development, and golf clubs as well. I mean, you have golf clubs today who are worth hundreds of crores, right? And I would say that the golf clubs, for example, supporting you in your this thing, I would say the BPGC should put in 10 crores, for a 10-year plan to produce 5 national champions. A KGA in Bangalore should put in 10 crores for the next 10 years to produce. And what happens is that this money can be used to give scholarships, can be used to get in more coaches, can be used for coach training, can be used to fund so many different things. Because today, I don't think a corporate sees enough value in the development side. I've spoken to many, many corporates. They don't see the value. But, Digraj, you're running a fantastic program in the BPGC, or someone's running it in KGA, or someone's running Delhi Golf Club. I think the strength of any golf club lies in their junior development. They're the future members and the future champions, right? So if we can have more money pumped into this system somehow, and I feel that the golf clubs are the key, not so much the corporates, because a lot of these golf clubs have huge corporates, or if they wanted to raise money, can do that, because any sponsor would be willing to come in and associate with the Bombay Presidency Golf Club or the KGA, right? And say, I'll give you a 20 lakhs a year for 5 years. So if we can build that kind of a system where everybody, all the stakeholders, see, today there's a lot of pressure on, let's say, even parents to spend that money on their kids' coaching or the nutrition. But let's say every golf club had a system where if you come in, right, and you show a certain level of play, it's subsidized, right? And the better you get, the less you pay. I mean, everybody's going to come into that system. Secondly, the kids are going to be incentivized to work harder. If I work harder, next year my golf set is sponsored. If I work even harder, next year, my fees is sponsored. So if we can get more money into the system somehow, I think with the golf clubs coming in, rather than worrying about corporate sponsorship, I think it would be great. And I think that's why we will, because we are going to be a powerhouse in golf. I'm fairly certain, but we can speed up that process for sure. And Indians, we're very, very, very skilled as human beings. Where a lot of us are very, very hardworking. We just need to have that support system around us. And what also gives a player confidence when they go for a tournament is knowing that they have a good support system around them, right? It takes away that fear of that failure or whatever it may be. And, for parents also, taking the pressure off them is important.
Okay, I think this, again, some good points there. Definitely an area where I think if the industry leaders and some people start thinking, something good can come out of it for sure. But Tarun, so far, wonderful information right through. I'm just going to read a few questions which are coming up from parents and others who are listening. This is from Arvind Sirohi with considerable expenses linked to all aspects of golf, equipment, coaching, fitness, etc. Managing finances is a big handicap for most of the parents. What do you suggest is a viable option to make finances available and sustain their aspirations?
So that's a difficult one to answer because yes, a lot of it is tied into how much money you can spend on your kid. But I think that you've got to find a balance there. I would say initially prioritize training over competition. So if you have a kid, let's say who's 9, 10, 11 years old, prioritize training, prioritize processes, right? Don't spend money traveling and playing 20 tournaments a year. I have a lot of kids who, they travel, they go out to the US Kids Championship in Scotland and then spend 7, 8 lakhs. That's one full year of training, right? So when the kid is younger, prioritize training, spend your money there to build them up, where it's their bodies, their minds, their golf swings, because you can always play local competition. There's enough local competition happening, and that should be your measure, right? And then as you get older, then you kind of can then bring them into the competitive side of it, and they will start to shine anyway. So managing finances is critical. There's no doubt. You have to be very, very clear as to how you can apportion your. But my thing is very, very. Whenever I meet a parent, what I do is I put a budget down. I ask them, please tell me honestly, what can you spend in 5 years? Please tell me what is your outlay? What can you safely say? Now, let's say the amount is 20 lakhs, right? What I will then sit with the parent and do is do a budgeting for 5 years, right? Year 1, year 2, year 3, year 4, and year 5. And this is how we're going to spend that money. Because let's say the kid's 13, I would expect that the kid can turn pro at the age of 18 and be good enough at the age of 16 to 18 to start attracting sponsors, right? But you have to start showing something. So I would say is first put a financial outlay there. And what happens is that parents tend to indulge initially and then suddenly realize that, oh my God, next year I can't do the same thing. I would say you plan your finances out because you know what your savings are, because it is going to cost money. There's no escaping that. Any good coaching and any good team that you build costs money. But if you really build that budget over 5 years, then you're never going to have to pull the kid out and break his heart after 3 years saying, I can't afford this anymore. So put that down, sit with your coach, see what is viable within that expenses. If the kid can only play, let's say 7 tournaments a year for 3 years, but do really good training and fitness, then so be it. We will work with that, right? It's not absolutely necessary that you have to play 25, 30 tournaments a year every year. And if you look at even Aditi, started playing a lot of competition only when she was 14, 15, 16. Before that, she was playing the national circuit, but sporadically. So put that down and sit with your expert, whether it's the coach or your team that you have. And based on that, you will do justice to, because I don't think you have to spend crores of rupees, right? If you are fortunate to have that money, that's great. But if you don't, it can be done also. If you're just a little more organized with how you spend.
Again, wonderful advice there. And we've been getting gems from you throughout this conversation, Tarun. So I'm using this term too often, perhaps, but nicely said. Another one that came a little earlier was, what do you enjoy coaching more? Kids, youth, pro golfers, club golfers? This is from Prasad.
I enjoy coaching everyone, to be honest. It's a big challenge for me. But what's most gratifying always is when you see the look on someone's face when you've sorted their slice out or when you've sorted their contact issues out. It's fantastic. So I've always loved coaching. I teach all kinds of players. Like I said, because I'm out of town, today to get a lesson in my academy, you have to drive out 80 kilometers. But anyone who's willing to drive out to the academy, I'm happy to teach them. I like teaching people who have a desire to improve. Right? And that's all it is. And I think every golfer today wants to improve and can put in a certain amount of work. And, I have a lot of clients at the club level also who are vying for the club championship, and that's great. Yeah, as long as you have a goal, it could be moving from a 20 handicap to a 15 handicap. To me, that's, for me, I like it to be measurable. To be honest, I love having a measurable goal. So the first thing I would do if you came to me was to actually put down a measurable goal. And then we work towards it. But I love coaching any level of player. I don't have an issue coaching juniors, or not that I enjoy coaching tour players more or less. I enjoy teaching everybody.
Excellent. Okay, what do you look for kids who come to your academy How do you judge whether they're good enough for the academy? And is there anything you specifically look out in the technique? And finally, are there any scholarships?
Very, very good question. How do we judge? So today, I have not come across a single kid who isn't talented. I have not come across it yet, but what I have come across is kids with different commitment levels. So for me, when a parent asks me if my kid has potential, does my kid have potential? I don't answer that question immediately because I can't answer that question immediately. What is a kid with potential? A kid with potential is somebody who's been in my academy for a year and has followed the protocols day in, day out with that discipline. Now that kid has potential, right? For me to just look at a kid hit balls and say, wow, he's got so much potential, does not really give the right answer. So for me, I need to work with a player for a period of 6 months to a year, and then I'll tell you. In fact, you yourself as a parent will know whether they have potential or not. And I've had a wonderful experience with a kid from Hyderabad who got into the system at the age of, I think, 13 or 14, and his parents couldn't believe how disciplined he became after 1 year of being at the academy, right? And within no time, he was number one in the South Zone. Now he's on the national circuit. But that is how we judge a player. Because see, technique, I can't look at anything in technique, right? Because I will fix it. If there's a technical issue, I'll fix it. If there's a fitness issue, I'll fix it, right? But do I get that level of commitment from the kid after 1 year? Is he really intrinsically motivated? Or is he doing it because maybe it's his parents' dream, right? So all those factors contribute to whether a kid has potential or not. And when it comes to scholarships, yes, we do give scholarships at the academy. Not too many, unfortunately, because we are still a startup. I think everybody thinks that the TSC Academy is this huge conglomerate business. We're not. It's hard work. We're a startup. We struggle every day. But yes, whatever we can do, we do. We do sometimes look for individual donors when we have a kid who's got potential, to support them for 3 to 5 years. We try our best. We don't have a scholarship system, to be honest, but we try our best. In fact, it could be one of your closest friends who's got a lot of money who we may have to approach and say, you know what, can you give me X amount of money for X years? And, I need to support this kid. We try our best. We're not super duper established where we have a corpus of money. I'd love to be there someday where I can give out scholarships, but we're hoping to get there.
Wonderful. And hopefully you do get there very quickly.
Yeah,
there's a good question from Romit. He says, hi, Tarun, good job. Could you also share how much would it cost a parent to enroll with your full-time academy training program, which includes competition play as well?
So competition play, I don't know, to be honest, but our full-time program costs 16.2 lakhs a year with academics. And see, our program is unique because it's a 365-day program. We have no holidays, right? So your kid, once they comes into our academy, is living with us through the year. Of course, you can take them home, when you feel like for Diwali or something like that, but it's a full year program. And competition costs are extra, obviously, but the beauty of our academy is that the kids love it so much they don't even want to go home, and that's been our real. I think it's a real thing for us because I have parents calling me saying, Tarun, it's Diwali, and my son says I don't want to come home anymore. It's a New Year's, and I want to see my kid, and to me that's a huge compliment. Because I think the environment is great. But yeah, that's pretty much the annual.
You couldn't get a better compliment, actually. Yeah.
Absolutely. You couldn't get a better compliment. In fact, even right now, in this time of lockdown, all the kids are calling me incessantly and saying, when can I come back? When can we come back to the academy? Because we're really missing it. So yeah, that's pretty much it. And then we also have the part-time programs, the various different programs that we have. But the normal full-time program, that's the cost. And yeah.
Okay, great. So will we be playing amateur tournaments while training at the academy? This is from Sai.
Will you repeat that question?
Will we be playing amateur tournaments while training at the academy?
So, the tournaments will come up, obviously, once you join our academy, Sai, I think you're coming in a few months. We're going to have to first assess where you are with your game, right? And we're going to have to see how much work is required before we can kind of unleash you on the world of competition. So you might have to wait 6 months before you can actually go out and play a tournament. But that being said, within the academy, we have a tournament every month, right? And it's a tournament that's basically a fun 2-day event that we have where you're going to basically play against everybody. And if Viraj and Trishul's on campus, you'll compete against them as well. And the rule in our tournaments is that if you don't finish under par, nobody wins a prize. So,
Okay.
we follow a system of adjusted tee boxes based on your ability, just like Romit does for the US kids as well. So you do have a chance to showcase your skill, but it's a lot of fun, and it's a great measure for you. And when you're ready, yes, we'll send you out to play amateur golf for sure. And hopefully someday, you'll turn pro. So Sai, looking forward to have you at the academy when the lockdown.
Well, Tarun, I think we'll work towards concluding the session. It's been fantastic. I mean, I've just learned so much just hearing you out. Very happy to see what you're doing, and that's the kind of compliments I think we're getting from across the place. Some great feedback I've had, already coming in. So thanks for sharing so much, and thanks for adding so much value to whoever's listened to you over this last hour and a half. It's been fantastic. I use this comment very often that in every conversation there is gold to be mined, and again I think today you've given us wonderful nuggets right through. I just hope everybody goes out there, looks at these recordings once, again in the future, because it's going to help them in every stage of the child's growth. So, Tarun, wish you the best. Keep on creating a lot more champions. India needs them. And I hope you get all the commercial success that you need so you can even do even more of this going forward. And I look forward to coming and spending some time with you as well.
I'm looking forward to that. And if I'm ever in Bombay, I will definitely, take some time from you, because I've got so much to show you. I'm really excited. Now that you're running the program in Bombay, I think Bombay's got a lot of potential. And I think with somebody like you at the helm of things, if we can work together a little bit, I'm sure we can have a lot of talent emerge from there as well.
Tarun, we're going to do that because fortunately we have a wonderful committee which is really pro juniors. They've showcased it. They're actually putting their money behind their intent. Couldn't be better. So I think it's a great time. We'd love to have you over. We'll fix something up.
Sounds good, again. Look forward to meeting you.
All right, great. Thanks everybody for being on, and wonderful. Really enjoyed it. Thanks so much, Tarun.
Thanks so much. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.